Thanks for that kind introduction, Philip. On behalf of the 14,500 professionals of the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency, I am honored to be at the symposium and to address the topic of forces reshaping the world. The thesis I'll espouse this afternoon is that the explosion of geospatial data is reshaping how we view our world. This deluge of data represents a tectonic shift in how we solve problems, conduct business, and live our daily lives. So it's time we reassess the important roles of geography and geospatial data as they play in our lives. Every modern local, regional, and global challenge, climate change, future energy landscape, and more, has geography at its core. The rapidly spreading geography of the internet, as more people carry more handheld devices to more places, demonstrates that everything, every place, and everyone is in a time and place. In today's world, every person with a cell phone has a sense of geolocation they didn't have 10 or 20 years ago. Of course, the cell phone also makes them a geospatial sensor of sorts. Every banking transaction has a geospatial and temporal component. Commercial companies around the world are filling the skies with small satellites that are taking images of the Earth and human activity that are widely available. And of course, our nation's classified systems still have exquisite capabilities that are essential to our nation's security. In short, in a world with a ubiquitous spatial and temporal reference, geospatial methods will lead the way to understanding the world. And it will be done by revealing the uncertainties and enigmas of rapidly changing complex systems. It's a bridge to the future of commerce, cooperation, and security. Let me tell you just a little bit about the organization that I lead. The National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency is tasked by the Department of Defense and the intelligence community to make sense of all this from a national security perspective. So with all that in mind, I know that some of you are already familiar with NGA, but for those who aren't, let's focus on this from a day-to-day perspective. NGA is both an agency within the U.S. intelligence community and a combat support agency within the Department of Defense. Those two roles provide distinct authorities and multiple customers. So, we support policymakers at the White House and Congress, military leaders at the Pentagon and troops at the forward edge, and first responders and humanitarian organizations. For the people who work at NGA, it's more than a job, it's a mission. That mission is to provide world-class geospatial intelligence, or GEOINT for short, to the U.S. and its allies, and to be a global leader in GEOINT. GEOINT is the use of imagery and geospatial information about where and when on Earth, to describe, assess, and depict physical features and activities on the Earth. GEOINT tells you what's happening, where it's happening, and when it's happening. It also reveals how it's happening, why it matters, and what's likely to happen next. We're in the business of getting to the truth. As I like to say, and this is a baseball phrase, we call balls and strikes. We have to get the call right and use our extensive toolbox available while doing just that. Our value proposition to those who count on us, the warfighter, the decision maker, the partner, the public, is to have GEOINT supremacy wherever we operate. To emphasize that promise, we recently updated the agency's motto. It's now know the world, show the way, from seabed to space. Our mission has always been to monitor with GEOINT foreign military, overseas human activities, and natural occurrences around the globe. We're looking up, down, and everywhere, from sea to space, to maintain a world that's safe for Americans and our allies. And we also help make sense of all that data by putting it into context for senior policymakers, for military planners, and first responders. And so much of our work is done right here in St. Louis, where today we directly employ 3,800 teammates, about a quarter of our workforce at NGA. And as far as the geospatial community as a whole, there are a few thousand more people also working in geospatial-related jobs in this region and counting. And that emphasis on St. Louis has a long and proud history. Our mission here started more than 80 years ago. In the midst of World War II, the Army Air Corps needed to expand its aeronautical charting capability to support the war in Europe and the Pacific. They made a calculated decision to move that capability from Washington to the center of the country and take advantage of the transportation network that existed here. That mission is still performed here. And today, that team maintains details on 50,000 airfields around the world and supports more than 13,000 U.S. Department of Defense aircraft. It's a proud lot. During the Cold War, the mission expanded to include a need to conduct precision targeting for intercontinental ballistic missiles. And St. Louis became central to our geomatics mission. Geomatics is the collection of sciences and technologies and tradecraft measuring and modeling the Earth to provide three-dimensional accuracy of every point in, on, or about the Earth. Besides supporting the Department of Defense, this work informs the geolocation and navigational accuracy of modern products, like your smartphone. In the 1960s, together with NASA and others, we mapped the moon, supporting the Apollo moon landing mission. More missions throughout the remainder of the 20th century led to the merger of imagery analysis capabilities within the intelligence community and the cartographic traditions of the Department of Defense. This, in turn, led to the establishment of geospatial intelligence as a distinct intelligence discipline. In addition to our aeronautical and geomatics mission, NGA also conducts regional intelligence analysis. We also perform some of our work in global issues like migration, food security, and climate change. With St. Louis firmly established as a natural hub for so many things geospatial, in 2016, we made the decision to further cement our standing in this region and announced that we were here to stay. We'd build a new NGA campus in North St. Louis. It's currently under construction, and NGA is scheduled to complete our move-in in 2026. Just like the decision in World War II to relocate to St. Louis, the decision to remain in St. Louis was a good one. Good for the nation's security, good for NGA, and good for the community. Through a collaborative effort between the local St. Louis government, industry, and academia, including WashU, the area has continued to attract new geospatial businesses and geospatial talent, and created geospatial academic programs to train the next generation of GeoInt professionals right here in St. Louis. It's become a GeoInt ecosystem. So, with an eye on the growing geospatial community here, the new campus was designed to have more unclassified and collaborative space, which will help NGA professionals more easily interact with their counterparts in industry and academia. But we didn't want to wait until 2026 to start this in person. We needed to collaborate. So, in 2021, we opened Moonshot Labs right downtown in St. Louis at the T-Rex Innovation Center. It's an unclassified space where NGA professionals can develop new geospatial techniques, technologies, and software, interacting side by side with innovators, uncleared GeoInt professionals, researchers and scientists, and of course, students. It's easy to see for all of us that St. Louis is emerging into a geospatial hub not only for the United States, but frankly for the world. When you add in the establishment of the Taylor Geospatial Institute, which adds a phenomenal resource that can deliver yet untold geospatial research and innovation in areas such as human-machine teaming, environmental and climate security, and photogrammetric research and imaging sciences. So for all those reasons, I contend that St. Louis is emerging as the nation's hub for geolocational services and thus a center for, quote, forces reshaping the world, unquote. With geospatial data as a force reshaping the world and some of the challenges ahead, let me dive a little bit deeper into how that data is making its mark. First, geospatial analysis in general and NGA itself are data-driven these days. Our ability to deliver the information our nation leaders need when they need it will depend on our ability to gather, store, analyze, and disseminate that data from more sources than ever before. A transformational era of geospatial collection, data management, and analysis. Some people have been concerned about having hundreds of small satellites continuously scanning the Earth and revolutionizing the way we sense the planet. You may have heard the term darkening of the skies, and that sounds ominous, but overall it's a good thing. And here's why. It's simply the world we deal with today. So we have to figure out how to coordinate and cooperate with industry, academia, and international allies and partners. With the persistence of so much geospatial data streaming from hundreds of overhead platforms covering the Earth multiple times a day, there are certainly challenges, but we're ready to tackle them. One important way we're working through this is with artificial intelligence, AI for short, and machine learning, ML for short. The bottom line is that with the rise of commercial satellites and new areas of interest, there is more geospatial data available than ever before. The volume of GeoInt data expands with the proliferation of collection systems and the expansion into the space domain. The deluge of data is a huge challenge. We can't simply store copies of all the GeoInt in all the places. And it's more data than NGA's experienced, exceptional workforce can be reasonably expected to lay eyes on and sift through. So we're looking for help in the form of AI and ML to assist our analysts in identifying changes in imagery and data that are significant and what those changes mean. And then helping us get that information to the people who need it. One significant initiative on that front is a project called MAVEN. MAVEN is designed in collaboration with the U.S. Department of Defense to rapidly deploy artificial intelligence to create real-time geospatial situational awareness. NGA assumed leadership of MAVEN at the beginning of this year. The goal for MAVEN is to empower the NGA workforce, partner across the global GeoInt community, and integrate industry-leading technology. Moreover, in a world of strategic competition, the challenge may be who can turn that volume of data faster. Through MAVEN, NGA aims to bring together disparate, often siloed communities of machine learning experts, data scientists, GIS experts, and imagery analysts. And together, these specialties help us improve AI model performance, develop standards, and lead interoperability efforts for the GeoInt community. What we've achieved with Maven is making a difference already. Maven can quickly fuse enormous amounts of data from across disparate data sets and provide meaningful answers. We work closely with the combatant commands to integrate AI into their workflows, accelerating operations and decision speeds. We've also increased the fidelity of targets, improved geolocation accuracy, and refined our test and evaluation process. Plus, we've ensured Maven models can run on other machine learning platforms. When the goals behind Maven are fully attained, NGA will have automated routine GeoInt tasks and corporate business processes, and this will free our analysts to focus on big picture problems and more strategic thinking. To achieve this, we'll have to take advantage of innovative ideas and technology coming from academic, corporate, and government partners. Academic and scientific research is a critical part of this equation. There are great minds here at WashU and other research institutions working on these very topics. We welcome collaborating with you all. Those who rely on NGA or collaborate with us should know we aren't just driven by data. Yes, it's an integral part of who we are and what we are, but in order to maintain the pace we need with our workforce, we abide by a set of values and principles. We will always be guided by our core values of excellence, accountability, respect, teamwork, and honesty. How forces reshape the world is as important from an ethical point of view as it is a technological one. We have an ethical imperative to adhere to and never abrogate. Our responsibility to follow our values, mitigate collateral damage, and obey accepted international law. We have a respect for human life, human dignity, and our world. So in my role as the leader of the U.S. GeoInt community, I'm bound to lead the effort to drive innovation towards the responsible development and use of products in development and use, including GeoInt AI. That's why we're developing what we call GeoInt Responsible AI Training. This is a certification, we call it GREAT for short. It will incorporate existing best practices across government, academia, nonprofits, and industry. And it will then tailor these practices to the unique challenges and responsibilities of GeoInt AI in our national security system. It will also allow those principles to trickle down to the responsible humans on the left and right of the AI, the developers and the users. Because it's being designed to facilitate progress, and it will not hamper it. So this takes me to a concept I've been talking about a lot over the last 18 months, and that is that we're in the midst of a reluctant revolution in military affairs, otherwise known as an RMA. The essence of this is that modern warfare is uncrewing, unmanning considerable portions of power projection. Not all of it, mind you, but considerable portions. The underlying idea here is that lethal technologies bringing extreme speeds, extreme ranges, and extreme accuracies reduce the need to put American troops in harm's way. But while there are exceptions, many of us don't like the obvious implications of uncrewing the platforms of conflict. I know that sounds strange, but it's true. We feel honor-bound to be over there, in theater, instead of staying here, operating from the rear. And that's reflective of an ethos that's been forged by every generation of American warfighter. There are so many highly motivated service members who want to be on those platforms with their teammates. And frankly, our defense industrial base prefers those large, crewed platforms too. That's where the reluctance comes in. But here's the problem. Our enemies and adversaries aren't reluctant, and they're not nostalgic. They'll have no problem using autonomous systems with lethal capabilities and authorities. If you doubt this, take a look at the efficiencies and effects brought by recent uncrewed technologies in Ukraine, the territory of Nagorno-Karabakh, Ethiopia, and throughout Southwest Asia. Now, I've offered this largely academic theory of a reluctant RMA for some time, and I really haven't had to qualify it with many significant developments until now. And that's because recently I read a speech given by the Deputy Secretary of Defense at the end of August. It was entitled "The Urgency to Innovate." In that speech, Dr. Hicks alluded to the Replicator initiative, the goal of which is for the U.S. to field attritable, autonomous systems at a scale of multiple thousands in multiple domains in the next 18 to 24 months. So there you go. Maybe we're not as reluctant as we used to be. But I'm sober to what this could mean for the future of armed conflict, the future of force design, and the future of conventional deterrence. And most importantly for NGA, what this could mean for the readiness implications of our work in AI, ML, and our core specialty and responsibility of distinguishing combatant from non-combatant. You can probably envision future warfare that pits an uncrewed platform against an uncrewed platform, AI against AI. For offensive operations, our American way of war typically puts a human in or on that loop to do everything we can to avoid automated collateral damage, to make sure U.S. forces don't hurt innocents, period. As the agency providing locations of targets for warfighters, both adversarial and innocent, NGA will continue to ensure that the human in or on the loop has all the information that they need. That's an ethical imperative for us. We have to be what I call the vanguard of distinction, the experts at knowing where everything is in both offensive and defensive operations. And it's my responsibility, not only as the director of NGA, but also as the functional manager who integrates all GEOINT conducted by the U.S. government to make this happen. Now, there will be a problem if and when our potential enemies issue completely autonomous mission orders to their uncrewed vehicles, and they take their humans completely out of the offensive engagement authority, because that causes an automatic offset, the need to match those mission-ordered platforms with mission-ordered defensive ones. But autonomous self-defense does actually conform to an American way of war. We've been coding machines to help us defend our forces for decades. And all of this only accentuates the importance of NGA's work with moving data and enabling positive identification. One aspect of our mission that might be in the background for some of you is that geospatial analysis and GEOINT is also a force for good. I'm proud to be part of an agency that strives to save Americans and others when it comes to humanitarian support and disaster relief. Even though we're an agency that deals primarily with foreign intelligence and strategic competitors, we are regularly called upon to help U.S. domestic agencies respond to hurricanes, wildfires, and other natural disasters. We have people whose very job is to work global safety issues, like monitoring geological changes to this planet and tracking water rising to dangerous levels, which could impact populated areas or food supply chains. Unsurprisingly, environmental security has been a topic of concern for the entire U.S. intelligence community for some time. We monitor impacts of climate change throughout the world, including changing coastlines and shifts in human geography. We provide charts, maps, and imagery products to support disaster relief efforts, to include overviews of damaged medical facilities and helicopter landing zones to help guide aid. Specifically in the Arctic region, we regularly monitor the area for visible impacts of climate change by analyzing changes in sea ice and permafrost. We continuously evaluate the nexus between climate, water, food, and ecological issues with respect to security issues. We also care about looking at long-term effects of our changing climate to develop infrastructure and community resilience strategies. So we look at water quality, water supply, and drought conditions which affect our global food supply. Environmental security also addresses topics like the origins of pandemic diseases and wildlife trafficking. There's a nexus from wildlife trafficking to other forms of trafficking, such as narcotics, weapons, and drugs, as well as the links to transnational organized criminal networks and terrorist organizations. I know that WashU has a renowned Living Earth collaborative, and it's gratifying that we have people at NGA who have been involved in that too. So there's a lot going on with NGA in an unclassified area that even those connected to our mission may not know we're actively working. One of those activities that's out in the unclassified space is an award-winning, innovative, open GeoInt and open source intelligence program called Terraline. It grew out of our 2015 to 2017 GeoInt Pathfinder program, which was 100% unclassified and remote access effort, done 5 years before COVID, and had so many people ultimately teleworking. The idea was to barter imagery and to co-create something of value with a nonprofit, like a school or a think tank, and deliver it by phone. It was a pretty radical concept at the time, but it's become a startup story that's now grown from what some considered a crazy idea to a respected brand in the OSINT and Open GeoInt world. It provides GIS researchers and geospatial science scholars with the chance to create and collaborate on high-level, in-depth content on important issues, ones that we all care about in the national security world. Earlier this year, Terraline won the OSINT Unit of the Year award from the OSINT Foundation, which is a new association of OSINT practitioners aimed at professionalizing the discipline of OSINT. Terraline works with nonprofits like schools, non-government organizations, and think tanks to produce quality open GeoInt and OSINT on topics of mutual benefit. NGA basically pays for the use of commercial imagery in the product in return for something valuable. And of course, NGA also provides GeoInt consulting services to the content because we have a long history in that field. But we don't exercise editorial control over the content in the name of academic freedom. We focus mostly on GeoInt methodology tips and stay away from happy-to-glad editorials. And it's all about the social media. Whenever a new Terraline article is published, NGA makes a summary video and a text description, then posted on LinkedIn, Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you watch any of the videos, you see they're pretty slick. Basically, this brings in substantial traffic and gets the author and the student names out there. And this is a primary carrot of the program. They get citation credit and publications named in the name of national service. Some authors, student authors, love to see their content in Terraline and in social media. And of course, our NATO allies are regularly consuming and using Ukraine content in there as well. We have some valuable content on cultural heritage destruction, Russian misinformation, and environmental damage. As Terraline has grown, other U.S. government agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency have reached out to help with their expert review of the content. Anyway, I hope you get the chance to bring up Terraline on your phone, on any major social media platform, and take a look at some of the real mission examples I've mentioned. You can share it with anyone. We like to say that Terraline is a great example of content that serves both the national defense and public good, and it can be both, and it is. In closing, using geospatial data and methods to examine problems of all sorts gives perspectives grounded in reality. As I mentioned earlier, NGA calls balls and strikes, and it's a force multiplier when paired with today's theme of forces reshaping the world. The technology we've discussed today is already revolutionizing industries, including the geospatial world. That's why our relationships with universities like WashU are more important to NGA than ever before. We need people coming in from different backgrounds, working side by side with us, tackling our hard problems. It's a win-win situation. We all benefit. The bottom line is that it takes great people to reshape the world for good. And that includes academia, which also trains our workforce of the future. Why does this all matter so much? Well, last week, at the official tribute in honor of the outgoing chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Secretary of Defense Austin, for whom I've worked 3 times, had this to say, quote, "To our entire joint force, today and every day, America is counting on you. We're counting on you to deter aggression wherever we can, to stand ready to fight, and to win wherever we must, to work with our partners for a more secure and peaceful world, and to defend the republic that we love," unquote. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency to support that vital mission in every way. And that brings me to the end of my prepared remarks. I'd be willing to take some questions if there are some. And I will just say this has been a real honor. It's an absolutely beautiful place here, a significant place. Thank you for the invitation. You win. You're the first question. It's a great question, and I'm here to tell you that as much as a futurist as I try to be, I cannot envision a future where people are not going to be doing this, period. And it comes down, we were just having this discussion in an environment over at T-Rex and also in our own building at 2nd Street. AI and ML, to some, represents the prospect for fewer people. It doesn't work that way, because at some point, you need the people to train the machine. Now, you're going to hear things about synthetic data and a machine training itself. That's great until the training data changes, and then someone actually has to recognize that the training data is changing. And right now, given the wetware that we have, that's going to be us. So the idea here, and I mentioned this last week in GeoResolution, we don't want to entrust those algorithms, which are life or death algorithms, let's be very honest, whether it's in warning or in targeting. We don't want those algorithms to learn from anything less than the best. So we have to continue to train the wetware that is the best. I cannot envision a situation where we will not have humans involved in this process. Thanks. Sir. It's a privilege.
But there's unlimited opportunities for you to serve, mankind and the world. And it's like, I don't know, how can you keep, organized? The 3 areas I'm particularly interested in here is how can you help climatologists to make a difference when you're
No, it wasn't a ramble. In fact, I think we need to hire you as a motivational speaker for our workforce. It was great. So we do need to stay grounded. And one thing that I'm really proud of, and I think we've got a longtime analyst with our workforce here in Shelby Pearson. We call balls and strikes on confirmation and that which we see, but when we make assessments, we make it clear we're making assessments. And we attach confidence levels. And this is something in the tradecraft of the intelligence community that's very, very important, because decision makers deserve to know if this is a lark based on just a gut feel, or whether actually we've got the context of history and precedent that kind of propels us to think this is high confidence and high likelihood. And so no matter what happens in terms of the consequences of some of these eventualities in this world, people are going to have to be predictive. They're going to have to make assessments, and we're going to continue to train people to stay grounded in what they know, what they don't know, and what they think. And then when they say what they think and they make that assessment, they're going to have to make sure that they make it clear about their level of confidence. So I hope that kind of addresses, kind of the basics of this tradecraft that we will never depart from. Now, on climatology, I'll just offer this. Yes, we deal a lot with satellites and with images. And so we begin our day with weather, okay? And the way I typically phrase this for visitors, it kind of tells us whether we're going to have a relatively easy day or whether we're going to have one of those resourceful days, because things get in the way, and weather's one of them. So that kind of started certainly a culture by which we already cared about the weather, we already cared about trends. Then we started basically having this privilege of data and just the truth of things like how thick is the ice, how thick is permafrost. We didn't have to get into the world of why it's changing. We could just call balls and strikes about the change. And yes, it's changing at an alarming rate, and we get to stay above the politics and just stick to the facts. And when you apply that data with real computational power, it tells a very important story. So that's kind of a privilege for us when you're talking from a METOC or climatological perspective.
So it makes a difference who you collaborate with, because you're giving information to the people who people have to use that information for action or preventive action if it's for the worst and action that will improve our planet and our people at the very best.
That's right.
So there's a lot of collaboration necessary, because you can't really stay away from the power of your data because it has great value and impact if not shared with the viewers.
That's right. Well said. We invite you to motivate our people.
It'll cost you.
Sure.
Thank you for accepting the invitation to come here. So this is an organization with a sort of international framing to how we stood up and why we put together. So I was wondering what thoughts you have of NPA as an organization situated in an international context, as opposed to the very important role you play as a USIC element. How do you think of NPA in that international perspective, where people see things quite differently in one place than another?
We have an entire division dedicated to international affairs. They'd be very happy to hear this question. I literally just used an example previously addressing this. As a naval officer, there's a certain leveling effect of the sea. Even if there might be some sort of a source of tension between two nations, it kind of all goes away when you're talking about the safety of life at sea. I've seen this. I've literally seen tensions broken by Navy talks. Well, it's kind of the same thing in GeoInt. It's not as controversial sometimes as signals intelligence or human intelligence. And I have noticed that it's easier to have a relationship internationally if GeoInt's at the core of the discussion. And so it should not be surprising that our international affairs division is actually quite sizable. And they drive very good relationships that are some of our oldest intelligence relationships, frankly, because it's so easy and compelling, frankly, to talk about that which is in front of us, that which we can see. So I hope that that addresses your question. It's really important. We value international partnerships in GeoInt. Sir.
Hi. To my understanding, this is slightly unrelated to start. To my understanding, GPS was a system that was originally created by the U.S. military and later made available to the public. And after it was made available to the public was able to make advances to it that were very significant beyond that the military had made advancements up to that point. To what extent does the NGA hope to make or plan to make Project Maven, the outcomes of Maven, accessible to the public so that it's able to be evolved and advanced in a similar fashion?
So I think that, first off, thanks for recognizing the importance of GPS and, by extension, recognizing our geomatics and geodesy personnel who live and breathe to ensure GPS is correct, okay? Because as I started this discussion, it really is that important. When we're talking about a datum, when we're talking about something like WGS84, which we created as the essence of precision and accuracy cartographically, which then becomes the essence of GPS accuracy, you better believe our people take that seriously. So they would love the way you started your comment. On AI and ML, I think what I'm finding right now is a responsibility to ensure that people are confident in us. And this goes to the ethical AI portion of my comments, responsible AI. And also another aspect of this situation, when we're talking about distinction, which can be a matter of life and death, ensuring that we can distinguish combatant from non-combatant. This is one of the elements of the laws of armed conflict. We've basically got humanity, necessity, proportionality, and distinction. As Americans, and I think a lot of people in this room, no matter what your nationality, we kind of grow up with values that lead us to understand necessity, proportionality, and humanity. Distinction's hard. So that's really tough. And what I am starting to realize is that humans do get tired. Humans do have a tendency to see things that might be not quite right, maybe a little confirmation bias in there. We train ourselves against this all the time. We're constantly testing ourselves with alternate theories to see if maybe we're not seeing things quite right. But isn't it reassuring to think that we've got machine learning going in the background, learning from people who are not tired and who are dedicated to ensuring that the algorithm's correct, to have itself be a guardrail? This is something I'm starting to talk about. I think it's so new that it might seem a bit revolutionary, but could AI actually be a guardrail in this case? We talk a lot about applying guardrails to AI, but I'm sort of liking, and I'll just tell you, out of all of the targets that I've been involved in throughout several wars, I'm mainly nervous about just ensuring we got the positive identification correct. I'm not nervous about the way we're going to employ munitions. I think we're very humane in that regard. We're very well trained, but the hardest thing is this distinction thing. And I kind of like the idea of an algorithm having learned from the best to ensure that we are still keeping that wetware as the best as we're making some of those life or death decisions. So I think that this is one of the aspects that I think will be a lasting implication of AI and ML. What it will produce for other tradecraft, which I think goes to your question as well, I think it's inevitable that as we demonstrate some best practices and we learn some things that are inherently unclassified about how to responsibly do AI and ML, we're going to share those things. And that's where the partnership with industry and academia will be pivotal. So, hope that helps. Thank you all very much.